Narcissists are incapable of maintaining healthy, steady connections. When narcissists develop connections, they are doing it simply just for their validation. That is the way their reward system works. While you're being breadcrumbed and your reward system, your dopamine is working off of the attention you get from them, their reward system is working off of the attention you are giving them. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are not, welcome back. My name is Megan Corinne, your emotionally intelligent bestie. And here we talk about everything manifesting emotional intelligence and spirituality. Now, we have the holidays right around the corner, and this is typically a time where I say the fakes of the relationships typically stand up because if you have any issues with intimacy or with attachment around this time where people are wanting to introduce you to their family and their friends for the holidays and all of this closeness, that's when the relationships that can't make it aren't going to make it. This is where the relationships that are starting to crumble or are built upon an unsteady foundation, I should say, this is where they start to crumble. So I thought, what better time than to post a video about narcissistic personality disorder? Now, I know that many of us think that we have been with a narcissist, and maybe we have, but the reality is that only like 2% of people are diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder. So while we may have a ton of people running around here undiagnosed, which I don't doubt, the reality is that we probably just dated people that displayed some of the characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder. Now, I will say that if you are dating someone that displays at least three or four of these characteristics, then obviously they're just walking around undiagnosed. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Now, as I was just mentioning, narcissism is typically talked about as like on the spectrum, where it's kind of this thing, everyone has narcissistic tendencies or they're narcissists if they display one or more traits. However, true narcissistic personality disorder is a very serious thing and it can interrupt daily life. So, the way that narcissistic personality disorder plays out in different interactions, let's go ahead and start with social interactions. And this looks like the person that just has to always make it about themselves. It's if anybody is having a conversation and it is not about them, they will find a way to redirect the attention to themselves. And speaking of redirecting the attention, this also includes like cutting people off. If you have that one person where every time you talk, you need to speak really quick because it's only a matter of time before they cut you off, that is a sign of narcissistic personality disorder. And then another sign of narcissistic personality disorder are people who name drop. So I live in Los Angeles, and in Los Angeles, everybody wants to be somebody important. And people will name drop all the time. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who name drops is a narcissist. Let's just be real. Like, don't you have to, like, isn't one of the requirements to live in LA that you have to be like slightly narcissist? Okay, I can only say that because I live here. But on a serious note, like LA is a very different vibe. Quick story time. So the other day I decided to take myself to a movie and I ended up sitting beside this guy. And as we're talking, he starts going on about, the school that his kids go to and how his kid, it's the same school that he starts name dropping celebrities that this celebrity goes to and that celebrity. And I just said, oh, it's one of those schools. And he cuts me off. He's like, it is not one of those schools. It is the school. Okay, cool. And then it's almost like he goes right back into caring. He's like, oh, but I don't really care about things like that. And I just looked at him and I'm like, but sir, you mentioned it, so you do care about things. No, I only care because I really like the education. And I'm just sitting here thinking, but you haven't mentioned anything about the education. However, I know every single celebrity that goes to the same school as your child. So, like, okay. But, it's things like that that I keep in mind that denial is not a conscious act. Like you may not think that you care about things like that, but if you're bringing it up, then you do, in fact, care about things like that. So, anyway, in social interactions, narcissistic tendencies can pop up in any given way. One time I dated a narcissist who bred from the hell out of me, but that's another story for another time. And he was just very charismatic. And I think that when it comes to narcissism, he actually is very textbook, very charismatic. Like you really didn't want to say anything bad about him other than the fact that everything always had to be about him, and that's pretty much what it is like when you're around narcissists. Like they're not necessarily bad people, they just require a lot of attention. But then there is also the dark side of narcissism where they are bad people and they do things where they are very dismissive, which we'll get into in just a minute. Now, when it comes to narcissists, it is important to know that there are two different types of narcissists. So you have your blatant narcissists, the ones that I'm speaking about now, but we also have our covert narcissists. And that's something that we'll also talk about in just a moment too, because covert narcissists respond and act very differently. Now, we just talked about narcissists in social interactions. So I know now you're probably thinking, who do I know? Or maybe you're not even trying to figure out who do you know displays any of the characteristics. You probably already have somebody in your head that has already come up. But let's think about narcissists in relationships. So when it comes to relationships, narcissists, they are the ones that are going to be gaslighting you, denying your experience. And when I tell you, it is so bad. It like the type of narcissism that can come out in relationships, especially in denying your experience, is what drives people crazy. Like I'm not even joking. It is what drives people crazy because you have to think about it. Narcissistic personality disorder, at the very foundation, is an insecure attachment style. Now, if you're not familiar with attachment theory, then I suggest you watch my video on the four different attachment styles. But a narcissistic personality disorder is an insecure attachment style, typically avoidant. Now, don't quote me on that just because I don't know if that's 100% true across the board. However, we can say like at least 95% of the time, like a narcissist is going to be avoidant. So because they are avoidant, avoidance don't deal with emotions. So when you're dealing with your emotions, you can be straight up telling your narcissistic partner, this is hurting my feelings, or this is how this is making me feel. And it will just go over their head every single time. Why? Because they have been denying their feelings and their needs for so long, they can't dare to think about someone else's. So if you're dealing with someone who is constantly dismissing your needs or denying your needs or denying your feelings, then what is that going to do? It's going to trigger that feeling of rejection within you. So one thing about being with a narcissist in a relationship is that they are very dismissive. And even if you identify as a secure attacher, if you find yourself in a romantic relationship with a narcissist, that can even turn a secure attacher anxious. Now, another thing to understand is that outside of our wanting to be loved and be in relationships, is that as humans, we have an innate need for connection. We are wired for connection. So, at our very core, like like we need each other. Now, when it comes to narcissists, because they have that insecure attachment style and because they do not feel comfortable in intimacy, they actively suppress their need for connection. However, it doesn't suppress the need for desire. So, narcissists, normally those relationships are very physical. They don't feel comfortable in intimacy. So, therefore, when it comes to going for those relationships that have depth, narcissists just can't meet you there. Instead, they keep their relationships around, usually just for validation. So, all in all, narcissists just have like a sense of entitlement. They're the ones that are going to cut the line and then think that no one should say a word about it. But as I was mentioning, not all narcissists do these grandiose gestures. Some are covert narcissists. Instead of using boastful behavior, they act very passive aggressive. This can look very much like always playing the victim. They're the ones that talk about how they're constantly misunderstood and they want people to feel bad for them. That playing the victim is how they continue to receive the sympathy that they need because that sympathy is actually their validation that they matter. Another sign of covert narcissism is they are hypersensitive to criticism. The second you say anything bad, they completely fall apart. It's never just that one thing, it's always the major thing. That is also another way of trying to subconsciously seek that validation. If I tell you that, let's say, for example, you're bad at drawing people, and then you go on, oh my God, I'm just a horrible artist altogether. That is seeking that validation that, it's not just that one thing, it's always that big thing. And ironically, another sign of covert narcissism is their lack of empathy. It's like covert narcissists are so caught up in their own feelings that they just can't meet you where you're at. They can't empathize with you. They can't see your feelings or feel your feelings with you. This is going to look a lot like a person where if you're having a conversation with them, right? And maybe you're talking about something you're going through, and then they have to say, "Oh, but I've been there and it was so much more worse." And I actually speak about this in one of my emotional intelligence courses where you want to be able to empathize with someone and maybe a shared experience, especially if you've been in that situation before. But if you know the story that you're going to tell is like this major grand thing that's going to steal the attention, now you know that you need to save that story, and but narcissists they don't have that little thing that says maybe I shouldn't, it's always I should because me shoulding is what's giving me the attention that I so desperately deserve and need. So, we have talked about the characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder, but how does it even develop? How do narcissists become narcissists? Because once you are going through the healing process, then you become a lot more empathetic to those around you, especially when they are dealing with heavy disorders such as narcissism, just because none of this is our fault. So narcissistic personality disorder develops by from a parent who gives their child too much admiration. So this is that parent where the child does the smallest thing and they're getting a go you every single time, every little thing they do, the child is getting all of the praise and the joy. And because they are getting all of this praise, the children take that kind of mentality into adulthood and they continue to need that outside validation just to mentally be okay. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, narcissism can also develop when a child is neglected. When a child is not getting enough attention and they are constantly being, or at least feeling like they are being looked over, then they take the mentality into the world that they have to do big things and create these big scenes in order to be noticed. So, narcissism actually develops when you're looking at two opposite ends of the spectrum, where on one end, you're overdoing it with the praise and the admiration, and then on the other end, you're doing dudeless squat. You're doing absolutely nothing. Narcissism is actually the result of one of the extremes. Now, obviously, there are other factors that could come into play, such as genetics and environment, that could 100% influence, if a person develops narcissistic personality disorder. But at the end of the day, our emotions run our world. And if you don't know that by now, then life is going to continue to throw you curveballs until you get the picture. So, as soon as you realize just how much of our world emotions run, then you understand that while all of these other factors may be a factor, they're not the factor. So, I want to go back a little bit and talk about narcissism in relationships because I think that we excuse a lot of behavior from people in relationships all in the name of love when a lot of this behavior is actually giving us a little inside peek into what could potentially be mental disorder, and this is like also to kind of remove the veil around mental disorders, like we're all trying to get by the best we can. So in relationships, narcissists are typically those that love bomb. Now, I want to be clear because avoidance also can love bomb. And I know we spoke about narcissists being avoidance, but avoidants are not always narcissists. So I want to repeat that. Narcissists are avoidance, but avoidants are not always narcissists. And love bombing is a characteristic of avoidance as well as an avoidant attachment style. However, with narcissists are about control. So when they are love bombing, they are love bombing in such a way that the object of their affection becomes, they want them to become emotionally dependent upon them. Because once that person is emotionally dependent upon them, then they're easier to manipulate. So the thing with narcissism is that while all of this may be subconsciously the thought process, this is the process, that the love bombing, because you want to make sure that this person sees you as this amazing and romantic love of their life, because the more they see you that way, then they can have their way with you. And that moves me into my next sign of narcissism in relationships, and that is devaluation. So once the narcissist has you right where they want you, the only way that they can remain in control is by making you smaller. So even the things, even some of the traits or the things that you did that a narcissist might have loved in the beginning, oh, now they're going to talk junk about it because you can't feel too good about yourself. Because the way that narcissistic personality disorder operates emotionally is, people who are narcissists have very low self-esteem. They don't feel comfortable with themselves. That's why they need either the outside validation to pump themselves up, or they got to make some shit up to, for other people to take attention to them. So because they have low self-esteem, it is physically uncomfortable for narcissists to be around people who think highly of themselves. So if you're thinking too highly of yourself, then a narcissist is going to have to cut you down. That's the only way that they feel comfortable. Now, it's important to understand and to remember that if this person is not a diagnosed narcissist, or if they don't believe that they are a narcissist, then all of these behaviors are happening subconsciously. It is that person that maybe they're constantly having to give you backhanded compliments. It's like, great job, although I know it took you only 2 hours to do it. Or maybe that wasn't a great example. Y'all know what I mean. You know what I mean by backhanded compliment, like where it's never just good, there's always a twist to it. That is a sign of narcissism. Why? Because, we're going to acknowledge that, hey, you did something right, but don't get the big head. And of course, if you have someone who is going out of their way to devalue you and make you feel like you ain't shit, then, there's obviously a lot of manipulation and gaslighting going on, like I mentioned before. But just to reiterate, because I think that gaslighting is a term that People overuse it so much that when it is applicable, no one's listening, because they've heard the word gaslighting so much that when someone really is being gaslit, it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder, that is one of the key ingredients, to making the whole narcissism work, is the gaslighting. And the tricky thing about it is that narcissists don't realize they're gaslighting you, because going back, as I was saying, that narcissists don't feel comfortable with their feelings, with their emotions, so they actively suppress them. If narcissists can't feel their own feelings, they for damn sure cannot feel your feelings. So when you're talking about your feelings, they're denying your experience, not necessarily because they think that you're lying, but you're talking to them, it's above their head, like you're trying to reach them at a place that they just simply can't touch. Narcissists can't touch that place of deep feeling without healing some of the wounds that they have built up around those emotions. So we have talked a lot about narcissists, and I know that if you are watching this video because maybe you're dating a narcissist or you know someone in your life that has a narcissist, all of this is making perfect sense to you, and yet you are still on the fence and you don't know if you should leave. And I'm going to tell you, I empathize with you. I dated a narcissist once that breadcrumbed me like no other. I did some things to try to get his attention that I am not necessarily proud of, so I totally understand. But I want to make this make sense to you, that when it comes to being breadcrumbed by narcissists, there is a very specific term that is used in psychology that comes into play, and it's called intermittent reinforcement. Now, intermittent reinforcement is known as one of the strongest types of reinforcement systems, just because it's hard to break free from. So it's based upon a study where when a bell was rang, there was a reward given. But then it got to a point where sometimes when the bell was rang, the reward wouldn't be given, sometimes it would be given. So what it did is it taught the participants to stay ready. So whenever the bell rang, whether they were receiving a reward or not, they were prepared to receive the reward. And that's the way breadcrumbing operates too. If you're dealing with a partner that is sometimes reaching out to you and sometimes not reaching out to you, then psychologically, you're going to want to stay ready for when that person reaches out to you, because you don't know when it's coming. And that is exactly how narcissists work. Now, understand that a lot of narcissists don't understand the psychology behind exactly what they're doing when they are breadcrumbing you, but that's what happens. And that's why it is so difficult for you to leave. What you have to do when you're ready to finally stop the breadcrumbing and leave the narcissist is that you have to be aware that you are breaking a very difficult cycle. That is the very first thing you have to do, is understand that what you are experiencing is very difficult because A, you have your insecure attachment style that is playing out, where you have now looked at this connection as a life or death situation. And then you also have this reinforcement system where your body, your brain is used to receiving this dopamine from this specific source, from this specific connection, this person, and you're taking that away. So it's like kind of like going through withdrawal. Not kind of, it is. It's like going through withdrawal, except for the withdrawal is a person. You need to know that if you have found yourself in any dynamic of a relationship with a narcissist, then that is relationship trauma and potentially abuse. Because, like I was telling you, narcissists in relationships, they prey on the manipulation and the belittling. That is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is emotional trauma. You can't possibly think that you experienced something like that that with someone and you don't carry those kind of battle scars into other situations. Narcissists are known for distorting reality. They distort reality for those involved because their reality is distorted. Either the distortion of their reality is because they have puffed themselves up into being more than what they are, or either they're having to fake it, to try to get the admiration from people. Either way, dealing with a narcissist can be detrimental to your mental health. And understand that if that is your experience, then there is something there that you absolutely need to heal from. Outside of the mental, physical, and emotional abuse of narcissists, they also create chronic stress and anxiety. Just think about it. You're constantly having to live in a state of not knowing what side you're going to get of a person. Are they going to be nice to you today? Are they going to be mean to you today? You have no idea. So, what are you doing? You are staying on constant alert. And what is constant alert? That's anxiety. You are remaining anxious because you're in fear of what is coming next. Narcissists are incapable of maintaining healthy, steady connections. When narcissists develop connections, they are doing it simply just for their validation. That is the way their reward system works. While you're being breadcrumbed and your reward system, your dopamine is working off of the attention you get from them, their reward system is working off of the attention you are giving them. The only way to deal with a narcissist is to not deal with them at all, or to understand exactly what they are and then know where you have to draw your own personal boundaries so that it's not interfering with your own mental health. And I guess it's important to even note at this point that when it comes to admitting fault, narcissists don't see fault because they're not wrong, you know? And obviously, I'm being very facetious when I say that, but narcissists are not wrong. So they are not typically going to admit fault. Now, I want to end this video with the question, can a narcissist change? Well, the very first thing is you have to admit that you are a narcissist. Now, I have gone over several characteristics in this video. If you resonate with at least 3 or 4, it's time to have a coming to Jesus moment because you've clearly made it to the end of this video because now maybe you're willing and ready to do something about it. Maybe. But knowing that you are a narcissist is the very first step. Now, once you realize that you are a narcissist, then it is time for you to heal the wounds that created the narcissism in the first place. That's where it's time to start peeling back those layers and looking into your childhood. What were your parents like? How were you treated? How were you rewarded? Were you neglected? How did that make you feel? What were your other relationships like based upon the relationship that you built with your parents? If you do believe that you are a narcissist or you have dealt with a narcissist and you are tired of dealing with narcissists and you are ready to finally be and find and attract your true love, then I have my Soul Search to Soulmate online course available for pre-order on my website now. Now, this course is going to be priced at $777, but for an introductory rate and for the new year, I have it priced at $143. Now, y'all, I'm telling you, this is probably going to be the most expansive, the most beautiful, the most rewarding course that you can take online, and you are going to attract your soulmate at the end of it. So if you are truly ready to find love, then click the link in the description box below. Go ahead and get your pre-order for this low price. It will not, once I take this price away, it will never be this low again. And if you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to hit a like, subscribe, comment, comment, share it with someone that you may think is a narcissist or would benefit from this video. And also, I want to hear about your experiences. Like, let's trade war stories. If you have been with a narcissist or you are a recovering narcissist, then please drop a comment below. I would love to hear from you. And until next time, I will see you later.